So I'd like to welcome you today. We want to talk to you about a new initiative that we're starting. I'm Alan Ogilvie and I'm from Friend MTS and I'm lead product manager. And we have Ali.
Hi everyone, this is Ali Hajjad. I'm a product marketing director at Intertrust, responsible for media and entertainment solutions.
And we have Paul.
Hello, Paul McDougall, a principal sales engineer with Bitmovement.
Thanks. So what we wanted to talk today about is a new initiative that we've been talking between ourselves about the problems that we see in how people develop OTT solutions. We're calling it the How to Trust Your Player initiative. So we got together and we want to bring you some tips and tricks for securing that content to the OTT platforms. Between us, we've seen a number of challenges inherent in building and implementing an OTT service today that securely protects the content and the revenue models. These challenges are critical for you yourself to capitalize on the current market opportunities of increased streaming consumption. And this isn't just technical, though. We will be talking eventually about the human element of the player, your subscriber. I think it's really important we understand the current streaming landscape and what kind of trends are we seeing in 2020, Ali?
Well, I think there has been a major shift in consumers' viewing behavior recently, and by far we have seen a significant increase in the consumption of streaming services as well as OTT subscriptions. And so before pandemic, the focus has mainly been around sports, but with people having more time and spending more time at home, we have been seeing actually more attention to movies and TV series. At the same time, piracy of streaming services has been skyrocketing actually. And for that, we see impact to the huge chunk of revenue for the streaming service providers. I think the recent report from ABI Research actually estimated more than 17% of worldwide viewing users access the content, streaming content illegally. So what does this mean? Basically, I think more importantly, it is a significant impact to the revenue of streaming service providers. Secondly, we have seen investment in new content is actually perceived to be risky, exactly because the content theft is directly impacting the potential ROI of these new investments. And lastly, we have seen an increase in licensing costs for premium content due to the lost revenue during distribution.
That's a good point, actually, Ali. I think one of the questions I have is why are consumers interested in the pirate service? Maybe, Paul, you can tell us a bit more about that.
Sure, I think one of the things that's really important as content protection technologies are implemented is that you have to maintain or achieve what maybe could be referred to as feature parity with piracy and the illegal ways or the infringing ways that customers can access content. And what I mean when I'm referring to that is that there is an expectation that customers have that they're going to be able to access the content that they're paying for in a variety of different devices, a variety of different platforms, and in a couple of different ways. Of course, at the moment, there's not a whole lot of pressure to have offline viewing because people are generally in places where they have access to internet connections. But as people start moving around again, we're probably going to see again that sort of increased interest in the offline viewing that we have. And up until relatively recently, that wasn't something that you could do with protected content where you had to have that ability to get that license request validated for playback of that content. So things like that, that broad platform reach and the usability, the ways to view that content are important to maintain so that customers feel like they're getting a good value for that content that they're watching there.
I mean, you talked about feature parity, but also, as you said, the value, the subscription selling point, how much that is, that's also got to be a bit of competition for the legitimate services.
Certainly. And I think one of the ways, too, that you can look at the balance of content protection technologies is that a well-implemented content protection technology is going to make it simple enough for a viewer to think that paying for that content is a better use of their time and money than it is to try and circumvent those content protection technologies. So if you provide a easily accessible way to get content that doesn't require a lot of effort, that, it's not a frustrating experience for an end user. And then you make it such that getting content through illicit methods is much more challenging, much more unpleasant, more time-consuming experience. That's going to cause your audience to go shift over to those legitimate content sources where you're going to generate revenue off of that content. You're going to be able to, maintain the value of those assets that you've created there.
Yeah. And then no longer is it possible for the consumer to look at a thing and go, yeah, that's probably a pirated site. They're actually faced with something that looks very legitimate, very slick, very, the graphics are great and it works really well. So that's one of the challenges there. I think it's how to compete with that. But in our collective experiences, we've all seen mistakes of the pitfalls in implementing security for the OTT platforms. What are some of the key issues that our solutions can address then, Paul?
I think there are things from the bit movement perspective. One of the things we really like to help our customers out with is let them have that broad reach of platforms. And when you're deploying these different content protection technologies, there are nuances to how they're configured to different platforms. So the way that you implement, for instance, Wi-Fi or Fairplay is different from the way that PlayReady is implemented and so forth. So simplifying that process for our customers so that they can have that broad addressable market, reach those users on the devices that they want to reach on. We help integrate the technologies that come from companies like FriendMTS and Intertrust and make those so that it's simpler for our mutual customers to go meet those expectations of their audience with that content. Things like the configuration of those license request URLs, things like support for the different encryption methods and so forth, things like the appropriate signaling for various watermarking technologies and so on.
I mean, obviously, we shouldn't be cutting steps or cutting corners, and often that's what results in leakiness, as it were. So it's definitely an issue. I mean, I often have wondered about, people doing load testing on their own sites. Sometimes that isn't done as much, and sometimes getting somebody in to actually security review what they've done, something else that FriendMTS actually does for various customers, come in and actually test the solution and see if we can break it, which is obviously quite a good thing as well. Now, these OTT platforms, when they make these types of mistakes, what happens? Ali, maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
No, this is a good point. I also completely agree that all the components need to work together to accomplish actually end-to-end security. I mean, we're talking about different technologies like encoding, packaging, DRM, and delivering the DRM licenses, secure playback on the device and player, monitoring and piracy tracking. And these are all advanced concepts, and they are critical. But they have to work together as a overall system architecture that avoids any loopholes that hackers might be using to defeat the purpose of end-to-end security. If operators don't pay attention to that, if they actually fail to implement all of these features, what will happen is they immediately discover their premium and exclusive content appearing on pirated sites, and suddenly see sudden impact to their expected revenue. So it's very essential to look at technically the overall system architecture and all the interfaces between these different components.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Alex. Is ultimately it hits your revenue. If you don't do these things, if you don't test properly, if you don't secure it properly, if you don't use the best way of hardening your clients, if you don't do all these things, potentially you lose revenue. So it's an investment thing. Yeah. So that's kind of why we got together, because from the three of us here, it's clear that how to trust your player is a really important topic. So what should you be expecting from our collaboration? So I think from the FriendMTS side, you can expect more articles from us around the end-to-end nature of this, that we deal with security when we're all the way from putting watermarks or investigating leaks, all the way through to monitoring and finding piracy material and helping do security reviews of existing services, working with our partners here, Bitmove and Intertrust and what they do. So a number of articles will come from us as well. Ali, what do we expect from Intertrust on this?
Sure. No, I think this initiative of how to trust your player, our goal here is to make sure that streaming service providers understand the features and the best practices that are used when they integrate a multi-DRM service, a cloud-based service. And it's important that they understand the steps they need to take in order to close any security loopholes. So what we will cover in this series is really about things like how to prevent attack against DRM license acquisition servers, whether they use it based on using a token-based license acquisition workflow or focusing on a proxy license acquisition model. Or we want to cover some sort of how to secure the interface between the multi-DRM platform and the encoder and packagers to retrieve the content encryption keys securely. Look at the different, DRM security levels and how to use multiple content keys and security levels, as well as kind of, DRM policies and restrictions are available to the operators in order to prevent piracy.
So Paul, what do we expect from Bitmoving on this?
Well, I think we're going to contribute some of the best practices and experiences that we've seen as these technologies get integrated together into the end user experience, how we've been able to help our customers achieve positive viewership and help them avoid losing their audience to those illicit sources of content.
We're really excited about the How to Trust Your Player series. Check out the first article posted last week. Look out for additional articles every other week. And fireside chats, a bit like this one, over the course of the series. We'll be posting those on social media channels, websites between the partners. Also keen to hear your views on this topic, so please do get in touch and tell us more. We'll wrap the series with a webinar probably in around October time. More details to come on that. We'll also have a reference implementation for demonstration and things probably towards the end as well. So last thing to do is thanks to Ali and to Paul for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan.